All right. Well, here's our show for July 6th. This is Sharif Yunus here with Dr. Kevin Majors.
Hello, good to
And
be back.
yeah, we're here to kind of have a follow-up on last session. We talked about left brain, right brain, especially in the context of work. And so we want to continue that discussion and kind of expand it out and draw out some more of the implications there. There are a couple things with regard to work that we didn't get to last time, so we wanted to fill that picture out a little bit. But first, Kevin, I wanted to we run this by you because we've talked in previous sessions of the importance of strategies and flexibility with regard to strategies, especially in the case of frustration. So if you feel that you're not making progress, that one of the causes of that is rigidity in the strategies, that you're just kind of doing the same thing over and over again.
Exactly.
And so when you're frustrated, that's a perfect time to say, okay, I got to develop new strategies. So I wanted to present you with kind of a puzzle. In a book that we both like, Thomas Sterner writes, it's the Practicing Mind. He talks about American archers versus Japanese archers in training for the Olympics. And he noted that they had very different training styles. So in particular, the Japanese archers, even when they got a bullseye, they would still not necessarily kind of celebrate that or consider that shot a success, but they would be much more attentive to their process of the way they shot the arrow, and was my elbow at the right angle? Did I release at the right time? And those sorts of questions, even if whether they got the bullseye or not, they would always be attentive to the process. So Kevin, yeah, I'd like to get your thoughts on that of flexibility in strategies, not just in the case of frustration and failure, but also in the case of success. I mean, is it equally important then to be improving the strategy?
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's a great book. So I really love The Practicing Mind. So I remember that we had both, actually, before we actually met each other, we had both just read that book.
Yeah.
So, and both liked it. The process, and he makes this point, and he doesn't use these words, but this is kind of the idea, that the process is infinitely shapeable, but the outcome is finite. And so when you're looking at an outcome, you're just looking at obtaining something. So then you get like a certain satisfaction of obtaining it. But if you're just focused on obtaining something in, say, a grade, or once you get it, you stop innovating. You stop making progress. So that's why he highlights like the Japanese, the archers, when they were training, they had almost like unattainable ideals of perfection. Now, granted, it was just for like a simple thing, but still, it was something that they could never fully attain. So there's something kind of infinite about it. In that sense, it's analogous to when we talk in optimal work about working for ideals. So the ideal is never attainable, so it's infinite, versus the outcome of your work. Because even if you were to start obtaining the right outcome, you could stagnate. You could stop growing, and that bleeds over to the rest of life. But if you're really always shaping yourself, always looking to innovate, you keep this growth mentality.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And then, and then I think that kind of rigidity in strategies also applies to the idea of hyperfocus, which we've talked a lot about in the past. So Kevin, what is hyperfocus? How does it relate to this idea of being rigid in strategies?
Yeah, so hyperfocus is almost, you could say, I don't have the science to back this up yet, but I would love that someday we have it. Hyperfocus is like flow when the left brain is in charge. So it loses the big picture. That's why you go down rabbit holes when you get in hyperfocus. So you just want, and you get some satisfaction of obtaining outcomes or making kind of progress, but it's now kind of totally separate from what you originally set out to do, perhaps, or at least it's not, like what you're putting into it isn't really warranted by the overall priorities. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same idea though, because I think when you're in hyperfocus, you're not thinking about the whole, so you're not able to innovate and be flexible. Because if you're being flexible and innovating, it's because you have an end in mind that you're always striving to achieve. and you keep raising the bar and trying to achieve it. In hyperfocus, you're doing the same kind of thing, the same kind of way, and it's very fixed. All you have is the satisfaction of progress, but you don't really have, you don't have flow, you don't have your full intelligence, you don't have any creativity.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
At least that would be the typical thing
Yeah.
of hyperfocus.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So
I
then,
also say that when people are like working for hyperfocus, just to throw it out, but they're not. I would say generally they're trying to get things done,
mm-hmm.
and trying to just get things over with is usually a sign that the person is kind of either rushing or the person is really motivated by fear,
Mm-hmm.
like fear of not getting things done, fear of failing, and so they're just trying to make sure they get things done, mm-hmm. and so it's so there is more there, a motive of fear.
Mm-hmm. Great. So now now zooming out, big picture a little bit. So in addition to work, we kind of have the whole of life, and we talk a lot about the kind of two possible motives being fear or love for what motivates all of your actions. So how does that fit into this picture of left brain, right brain?
I see. It's a good question. I think that when I'm thinking of like the whole of life and how to zoom out, one thing we have to like be conscious of is that, and this is I think the left brain view of things, is very much everything is atomized. So I was mentioning last time, like the left brain sees the world as being machines, as being mechanisms, as actually just being molecules. Everything is atomized with the left brain's view of things. And rather than seeing things in their rich context. And even when you think of your life, do you think of your life in terms of you and your personal success or your personal failure? Or are you thinking about your life in your family, in kind of with all the relationships that you have? So the right brain tends to see everything in its broader context of relations with others. That's why it's open to ideals, because ideals primarily refer to how we love others. And so if we're motivated by love, that means we're motivated by this context, of our family, our friends, and the people that we are serving. So the motives of love will lead you to really want to serve other people in whatever way they need the service. And so it's always new and original, but it's focused on others and their actual present needs, versus just me being focused on myself or my self-perfection. And that's why many times when people think about productivity and how to improve how they work, they're still thinking in terms of the atomized individual. I think that actually makes real growth in work impossible, because real growth comes from ideals, which are ultimately when you're motivated by love and service. So that's why you constantly are getting people, if you really are loving others, you really want to serve them. And that means that then you want to grow as much as you can, because that growth is how you give your best to others. Like the growth makes you more available and able to serve others. And so the ultimate meaning of personal growth is that you then can give your best to those that you love.
So then can you talk a little bit about that idea of flexibility with regard to service, and creativity, and in the right brain that we're always seeing everything as new, everything as an opportunity. That's the basis of reframing. And then also with service is a constant kind of reframe for us, that any difficulty we encounter is a way of serving. And then it seems like this kind of idea of service, right brain, newness, opportunity, those are all really deeply connected.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you're really interested in serving others, it always requires having a sense of innovation. So that not only that, but it's not just about, okay, so say that if you're staying home to take care of a child and you're making them lunch, still, in a sense, the innovative original sense is that this is an N of one. This is a whole new, unique experience. Like, I'm going to try to give my best in this one little act of providing lunch, because that is how you put love into it. And then it's not just about the what that you're doing, but it's about the how and why you're doing it right now. Otherwise, it would just be, you could hire someone to do that, and they come in and give. If the goal is that you just provide an outcome for someone, that then anyone could do that. But really, the ultimate things in life, where you come to love and serve others and those closest to you, you're irreplaceable in that. And it's the way that you do it. It's the love with which you do it, and it's that you're actually present to them personally, and kind of giving yourself actually to them in this present moment. So I think there's something beautiful about this sense of, like, when we're really serving others, they're not interchangeable and we're not interchangeable. We're serving this person right now, and we're giving this person our whole attention and our best. Yeah. Otherwise, even conversations would just be about like techniques or outcomes, not really genuinely being open to the other person.
There's this great book about programming. I would say it's my favorite book that I've ever read about how to program. It's called Clean Code. And the author asks a couple kind of famous, if you can be a famous programmer, what their definition of clean code is, what their definition of good code is. And one of the guys responds, I can't define it, but I'll say that clean code it's code that looks like it was written by someone who cares. So it's like, even though the only thing anyone else is going to experience is the outcome of the program, then when you go actually look at the code behind the program, there's been care put into all the details throughout, so that it was written by, I actually care about writing this specific part of the code at each time. There's no kind of rote repetition, which is also something we talk a lot about.
It is something that's beautiful. Like, and if you're like entrusted with something in work or home, you can't just be a caretaker of it, just making sure certain things get done, but you want to be an innovator of it. So there's something about the motive of service that, you pay attention to the details. They say that maybe it's true, love dilates the eyes so you can see smaller details. So you find out how to how to finish off things beautifully in little ways. You're always showing, and that's the sense that you treat it like something new. So, and you're not just rotely doing it. So I think that what happens when, just getting things done means doing them as efficiently as possible, which generally means trying to do it as quickly without any thought, just getting it over with. But that ends up draining life of love and meaning. And I think that really what we want to have is a sense that every interaction with someone else, you actually experience a kind of calling. Like, you feel called, by that person and the fact that you're together now, to somehow give them your best attention and your best mind, your best self. But there's a sense of calling that comes, and that's very right-brained. Again, the sense of meaning and purpose and calling. Calling is interpersonal always. But you can see it when people approach their work in a right-brained way, that as they are growing and doing it, they experience it as a calling. So it's, like, this is my vocation in life. It's not just something I do or I happen to do, and then these people are the ones I'm called to serve. And so, so I think that's a key thing, that you experience it interpersonally and as a calling.
And that idea of calling is also very connected to like seeing each part, each interaction, each person within the context of your whole life. That you can't separate those two things, but this interaction with this person is part of what gives meaning to my whole life.
Yeah. And you essentially then are always trying to give your whole being to the person that you're with right now. And you're always trying to give your whole attention. So your whole self is you're making a gift of it continually. And so, but it does always include the sense of the whole.
Right. So then how do we kind of like to break things down, reframing mindfulness challenge in terms of this sense of being with others and living that calling out in the context of those relationships? How does that relate to, reframing mindfulness and challenge? I think you kind of brought up challenge briefly just then, of giving your whole self to it. That would really be challenging yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think you can go through them. I think that when we're reframing, we're trying to see, how is this an opportunity for me to give my best? And so you're forming an image of the beautiful, that will then guide your efforts and shape yourself. Reframing ultimately is the question, like, what am I serving? Or, am I serving a who or a what? You could also say, am I really trying to serve this person in the best way possible to help real people? If not, we're actually just serving ourselves and ultimately serving our fears. It's the interesting thing about the left brain is that either, in a sense, it is the servant of the right brain, because the right brain sees the big picture and the beauty, and then the left brain works on that and strategizes it, makes it happen. But if not, it's going to end up serving the lower cortex, the emotions, which are all about cravings and fears. And ultimately, cravings and fears are very much the same thing. And so the more people are dominated by the left brain, the more atomized they are, the more their goals are just individualistic and selfish. And ultimately, they become the slaves of their own fears and their own cravings. And then the left brain is always problem-solving comfort. It's just trying to solve this issue of my own personal comfort. Once you see that actually this right now, I have an opportunity to give my best, and in a way that actually is helping those that I love, and you're motivated by love, then mindfulness helps you to be fully in the present moment, in silence even. That's actually an interesting thing that you can tell if you're using your right or left brain by, are there words in your head right now? So when you're in silence, especially silence in the loving presence of another, that's completely a right brain thing. Then the right brain is totally in charge. So, and that's kind of what we do then with mindfulness, is you get into the present moment, and in a way you become invisible to yourself. You become self-forgetful, and which is another thing that's necessary to work at your best, is you're not thinking about yourself. You're not problem solving your own comfort, your own fears. So, and then to embrace the challenge, that is really where you are now internally stretching yourself to grow. And so you're seeing yourself as, in some way, you are shaping yourself according to some higher ideal of trying to give your best and to love the best. That's completely different than the fixed mindset, which is the left brain, where you're just wondering, worrying, am I good enough? Are my efforts good enough? And you're quick to see futility. Once you embrace the challenge, it's no longer an external thing that's measuring you that you're going to see as being futile. But you're actually now enthused to somehow use this challenge to grow, which, again, entirely right brain concepts. So I think if people are seeing an opportunity to be present and to grow, they're surely then bringing their best right brain into the work and into their life.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, is how do I know that I'm being right brain? I assume there's some scientific technological device that I can wear or be put inside of that can detect whether my right brain is in charge. But how do I know day to day? And actually, is that even important that
actually,
I know that? Like,
there is. You could, if you really wanted, if you're in perfect silence in your, if you're, say, trying to simply be mindful of the present moment, perhaps your own very active being, the sensation of your breath, you would be able to see it physiologically. So, and you would feel your heart rate slow down as you exhale and then speed up as you inhale. Okay. So now that's not measuring, that is actually a sign of your right brain being fully activated, but it's because you're being mindful and you're reframed. And so that does turn your parasympathetics on. So parasympathetics are ultimately what are turned on when you're at peace and then bonding with others. So, and truly present to others.
What are parasympathetics?
It just means that you are not in threat mode.
Okay.
So you're in a kind of opportunity mode where you're open to reality. Sympathetics is fight or flight response. That's threat mode.
Okay.
So if you're complaining and if you're negative, okay, then that's definitely, that's going to be So it's normal things. Can you detect if you've reframed and that you're seeing something as an opportunity? Can you detect that you're mindful? Well, there are physiological markers of that. The bigger thing, though, is not to be focused on attaining some kind of state within yourself. You know, like I'm trying to make sure I'm perfectly. That would actually be a very left brain approach to it.
Mm.
Yeah, I want to make sure I want to have certainty that I'm using my right brain. That's the left brain approach.
Yeah.
It's more about really engaging and actually having motives of giving your best to those around you right now. So that the deeper thing is your motive and then the flexibility you're bringing to meet those needs, which real service always requires. So I'd say the best thing is we just try to be motivated by love. You try to renew that sense as much as you can. And then all these things just take place in the background. You don't have to manually do it.
Right. So the right brain doesn't care whether you're right brain or left brain, but the left brain is worrying about that.
The left brain would be the one to be really concerned about that and then want total certainty, because it's always about control and certainty. But if you're instead, look for the beautiful thing that you can do now. Look at how can this trigger bring out the best in me? How can this hour of work really be the most beautiful possible? How do I make my life the most beautiful possible? So like, what kind of life am I really shaping and aiming for? Okay, then you don't think about whether you're doing right or left brain. You just aim for that.
So could this is the last question I have. Could we talk in the other, like in task default attention, that distinction, or task predictive attention, that the best case is when they're working in harmony. So if predictive attention is running wild, you're going to have problems with distractions. So the proper thing is that you can train your predictive attention to carry you through the task in the right way. Can you talk a little bit about, because sometimes it can sound like, okay, you know, maybe I need to schedule a surgery and get the left part of my brain, or left half of my brain removed right about now. But can you talk a little bit about just the interaction and how the left brain really does serve the right brain
Yeah, so the left brain is a servant. As long as it is kind of united to the right brain, it does great work. It does a lot of the polishing of action. So for instance, if you're going to a party, you know, your desire to actually connect with people there and form friendships, you know, and to get to know them, you know, that you could say is all like big picture, right-brained kind of approach to it. But then how you actually introduce yourself to people and making good eye contact right away, and you know, we used to offer our hands for people to shake. We don't do that anymore.
not anymore.
You know, but like all those little things that go into the first 90 seconds of an interaction. You know, this Nicholas Boothman, he has these books like How to Make People Like You in 90 Seconds.
Yeah.
Total left brain approach. You know, it's just like it's just taking the first 90 seconds of meeting someone new, breaking it down into little steps that you can do. But I think that can be super helpful, because you get to master these little arts of getting to know people, of how do you tell them about yourself and how do you get to know them. And so being able to do that kind of dance, you could call it, you know, it's like dancing, right? That mastering the little moves is very left brain, but it has to be guided by these higher things. Ultimately, it's that, you know, you don't want your ultimate motives to be about fear. You want them to be about love. So it's not like, oh, I'm so afraid people aren't going to like me. I have to make sure that I make 5 new friends. Well, no, that's all outcomes and stuff. But just being there, being open to making friends, being curious. So again, it's the bigger picture of what's guiding you. But then these left brain things work perfectly with it, if in fact your motives are ultimately love and service.
That's actually very cool, because it shows that when you're working or living with motives of love and service, that actually goes down to that your brain is actually working in the best possible way when you're doing that, which is kind of surprising. Or maybe it's not
exactly.
surprising, but it's just.
Yeah, and that when you're really trying to shape yourself according to ideals, it always has this positive sense that now there's something beautiful you're aiming at. So one last thing I could mention is that even when it comes to the best way of acting, that the left brain conceives everything as rigid rules. So, and laws, and it's about like controlling behavior. So that seeing even morality as all rules is a completely left brain way of thinking of it. The right brain is much more about love and ideals. So it's like looking at the best way of treating people. How, you know, it doesn't conceive of the right things as being in any way about like rules, but it is instead, granted those rules are kind of there, you know, but there's a deeper sense of what it really means to love and to serve.
That's beautiful. That's a great note to end on. Cool. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks a lot, Kevin, for all these insights.
Great to be here.
And
Thanks for the questions.
we'll be back next week. So looking forward to it.
Take care.